Well, good morning to each of you this morning. It's great to welcome you here at Stones Hill. And thank you for the emphasis on Jesus this morning. We certainly are going to be lifting Him up. And I hope that you have had a personal relationship, or you have a personal relationship with Christ. I know that we all come at this at different places on the spiritual growth chart, don't we? But I can tell you is when you come to a place in your life where Christ is your everything, it does something incredible in you and in your relationships, in the joy that you are able to have and to live from in your life. And the spiritual growth, kind of goes up and down. And then when you encounter Christ, it kind of begins to climb. And you finally make progress because you realize it's all about Him and not you. And so that's our hope. And really that's kind of where this whole thing is going to go this morning. And so I want you to be thinking about it, because at the end of the message, we conclude messages in different ways. And so at the end of the message today, we may play a song then and give you an opportunity just to think about some of the things I've talked to you about. It's great to have you here. Thank you for your acts of service. The Operation Christmas Child is awesome. And we appreciate all of you who've taken the time to serve and make a box. That's awesome. That's going to bless a lot of people. Some miscellaneous things. We'll do a brief Q&A next week. And then in the service, you be thinking about this, because in the service, we're going to give you an opportunity to express your gratitude. And it seems like every Thanksgiving season, it's just a good time for us to dedicate the bulk of the sermon time, what ordinarily is sermon time, to give you a voice. And so we want you to share, to lift the Lord up, to express gratitude, people you're thankful for, or how the Lord has worked in your life over the previous year. That would just be awesome. So come next week prepared to share that. And we'll have a person or two on the mic, and we'll be able to get to you and let you share and let you be the message, okay? So that's going to be a special time. And at this point, I'm planning on doing a Q&A with someone who's actually suffered from depression. And so we know at this time of year that is a really critical issue for a lot of people. And so if you've struggled with depression in your life, or these deep lows in your life that you just really struggle with, then that would be an opportunity for you, Lord willing, if this works out, I think it will, just to have a little input on that and maybe turn all of that that you're feeling toward the Lord at this time. So think about that. If you're new to the sermon series, then I would say stay with what we're doing here on Sunday. There's little study guides in the back at the table and at the end of this aisleway, the very back. There's a little table there, and there's study guides. And we want to do our very best to make this user-friendly on Sundays. While we are very strategic in what we talk about, because we feel the Bible's a special book, we just want to know why. And we're answering that question every week. And we're trying to nudge you toward a full life restoration, because we're all broken somehow. And we're trying to be restored to all that God created us to be. And that's on the very front of your bulletin, the vision statement. Okay? So to do that, we methodically work through each of the Bible books, because those books show us different ways we can achieve a life restoration. And I say achieve hesitantly, because it's really what's been achieved already in and through Christ. We just get in alignment with it. Okay? And so that's what this is about. So please feel free, if you feel like you're showing up in a movie 30 minutes late, wondering who the major players are and where the plot's headed, the study guides will help orient you to that. I do a brown bag one Sunday a month, and we have that coming up next week. So I know you're going to have lots of turkey and ham gravy, okay, and hot rolls and green beans and apple pie and pumpkin rolls and all these wonderful things you're going to make. But I know you're going to save a little room for the brown bag on Sunday. I just know you will. And it's not really about the food, but we do provide food. But you really need to sign up for it. in order for me to know and for Barb to know who's coming so you can have a bag lunch ready, all right? So that's next week, and it gives you an opportunity just to share with me things that are on your heart. Maybe you got questions. Maybe you just need a friend and would just like to talk to somebody for just a few minutes. It's about an hour, 15 minutes that we dedicate to this. And so please feel free to sign up, and each of you will have an opportunity to share your comments in that brown bag. The baptism's been mentioned, and so please consider this at this time. There's been a couple people that's expressed an interest to me, and so I like to listen to the body of Christ in these times, and I think it's time for a baptism. And so maybe you've taken a spiritual step in your life where you're ready for this. And I'll explain more about that in the orientation on December 7th. Have you heard about Hannah Elizabeth Matson? Anybody heard about this little new precious baby? Okay, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I just talked to the daddy who's here today. He said, and I quote, "She's 1 week old and she already rolled over." Isn't that great? Let's give him a hand. Yes. She's going to be an Olympian or something. I don't know, but that's phenomenal. She's a stout little girl, beautiful pink little girl. So we're praising God for that. I'll tell you what, let's transition here as we look at this book we call Philippians in the Bible. The series is called Renewing Your Mind. A sub-theme of joy predominates, but Jesus really is the dominant motif in this book, because everything that Paul's about really echoes and mirrors the person of Jesus. And my homiletical task, homiletics is just a study of how to prepare messages and deliver them. And the homiletical task is not always easy. But this morning, I think, and the work of a good teacher is to take complicated information, simplify it for your application in your life. And so it's not really that complicated this morning, but at the same time, this message and the truth of this message has the ability to really revolutionize your joy, your whole worldview, your life purpose, how you do relationships. It just has the ability to revolutionize everything in your life. And I feel like that it's best for me to hang my message thoughts, if I could say it that way, on 4 questions. Those 4 questions, slide 6 if you would. 4 questions really, I think, summarize the teaching of 4 verses, 4 very powerful verses in the book of Philippians. It's in the New Testament, near the back. Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. And these 4 questions are questions that I think we could consider, and that when we consider these, it really impacts how our holiday season is going to go, and it's going to impact how your marriage goes, your relationships, your joy, all these things we've been talking about. And the first question is, do I possess a spiritual clarity? Do I really understand the essence of what it means to walk with Christ and understand what's happened in my life in Christ and for the world? Do I understand the gospel? These are points of clarity that I want to make this morning, because if I don't make these, I think we can just kind of walk through the spiritual life in kind of a gray cloud and not really understand what it is we're trying to achieve, or at least trying to recognize and live out. Do I pursue relational unity? That's a good question for all of us. Are your behaviors, beliefs, the way you live your life, is it conducive to unifying people? Or is it a divisive, abrasive, very, difficult for you to get along with other people because of maybe some things in your life? And so it's a good question. Do I pursue relational unity? Do I practice personal humility? Very important question. Do I participate in selfless service? I read a book by Yancey one time, Philip Yancey. He's a very good writer. And he says he's interviewed celebrities and he's interviewed servants. And this interviewing person, a friend of Yancey, said, I would much rather interview the servants because there was a depth to their life that I never got with the celebrities. The celebrities are awesome, okay? They've accomplished, in some cases, they've accomplished some really neat things. And maybe you get to look around their house or apartment, or more like a mansion, and maybe you get to celebrate and talking about their achievements in life and all the things that they've been able to do. They're celebrities, and we've kind of come to envy celebrities. And Yancey said, his friend said, but I'd much rather spend time with people like, well, say maybe a missionary that served in some place tucked away from the world for 30 years. And they come back from that experience, and the depth of insight that they have is so much greater. It's not to disparage anybody. He's just saying that there is, when you selflessly serve, when you live a life of humility, and you've united people around common causes, and you've clarified the essential elements of the spiritual life, when you live that way, there's a depth of life to that person that you begin to pick up on that, and they're tapped into a different water source than everybody else is. That was Paul. That was Jesus. And I hope it's us. I want us to be these kind of people. All right? Not celebrities. And if you are a celebrity of sorts, whether local or national or international someday, just use it for the glory of God, because He's placed you there. And so use it. If you're considered a celebrity by the world, use it for good. Praise God. But don't necessarily live out a celebrity life purpose where I want this. This is my calling, to be a celebrity. No. Our calling is to be a servant. And so really, 4 questions, 2 contrasts. We have celebrity, we have servant. Where do you want to align? And how are you going to align this morning? As we proceed through what's one of the most powerful chapters on living out a life of selfless sacrificial service. These are the people who impact a world. I was just talking with Will recently, and he was sharing with me how 2 years ago, you remember, he did boot camp in Fort Benning, Georgia. And it really leveled him and really clarified issues maybe he hadn't had clarified in his life up until then. And I said, what was one of the hardest things about that experience for you? And he just said this recently, because I was driving at another thing I was talking to him about. And he said, I remember going to chapel one day after several days of boot camp, and I got to chapel and the music started, and I just started crying. I just couldn't stop. And I thought about it. It's like, what am I missing? I mean, am I homesick? Am I just challenged? Am I tired? What is this? And he shared with me, he said, I think I boiled it down to, I just missed Christian friends. I just, boot camp doesn't attract a lot of people that have a lot of spiritual depth. Okay? You with me? All right? He missed it. He missed the people. That there was something about people who lived for something other than just themselves that was so attractive and so inviting, and it meant so much. And so that's what Paul is about, and that's what he wants us to be about as we endeavor to build families and a church community. And see, what we want to do here at Stones Hill, we want to build a community that is irresistibly attractive. That when 9:55 on Sunday morning comes and the middle school student wakes up, they know where they want to be. And that's 9:55. Some of you, maybe 9:45. 9:45 Sunday morning rolls around. I know where I want to be. You see, there's this little body of believers that they live for something other than themselves. And they have this selfless manner about them. And there's just a way that they build others up in humility. And they unite around common causes. And they have this clarity to life. And there's some dude over there that just believes the Bible is like the greatest, best thing in the world. And he just explains it little by little. And it's like, I want to be in that. I need that. I need to think, I need to start thinking differently. See, we want this to be an irresistible community on a Sunday morning that people cannot stay away from. How do we do that? Do we go for celebrity? Or do we go for this deep, radical, selfless, sacrificial service where we live for others and we live primarily for Christ? What will attract? Well, we know what can attract and what attracts. It's the glitz and glamour of the celebrity life, right? That can clearly attract a crowd these days. But we know in the long run that those irresistible communities are those who have answered these questions and who live it out in such a way that I got to be immersed in that because I know me too well and it's all about me and I need something different. Okay? All right. So this is kind of how this is going to work and how it's going to move here to orient you then to our verses that we're going to look at along with these questions. You'll have to recall that there's a guy by the name of Epaphroditus, and we know from reading ahead in the book of Philippians that he brought a very generous gift from the church, this irresistible community in the little place called Philippi, thus the Philippians, and he brings this really generous gift from them because they found out that Paul was in prison. They weren't altogether sure why. There was even a little bit of suspicion surrounding his imprisonment and incarceration. But they believed in him and they had trust in him and they knew he was about lifting others up and selflessly sacrificing and serving and pulling the body of Christ together and articulating the tenets of the Christian faith. And doing that so well, they believed in him. They took up an offering. They sent it by way of Epaphroditus to Rome. And I just have a feeling this offering showed up on a really, really sad and blue day for Paul. And it probably meant the world. In fact, not probably. It meant the world to him. It meant the world to him to such an extent that he sits down and he writes one of the most beautiful, diplomatic, relationally unifying letters that you will find in the Bible. And he elevates his expectations of their spiritual motives and attitudes, and he praises them, and he thanks God for them, and he prays for them, and he invests in them. And for the whole first chapter, he's just going on and on and on about how much they mean to him, and how this gift to him triggered those emotions. And then we get to chapter 2, where he begins to talk about some housekeeping things. And so he's thanked the people for their investment in him. But in the first 4 verses of Philippians chapter 2, we have one, and I speak from a grammatical sense, we have one verb in all the participles and the phrases and infinitives and so on and so forth. One verb. And a verb, again speaking from a grammatical perspective, dominates the action. It dominates the topic. What's the verb? We often don't see this very clearly in translations and things, but the verb is make my joy complete. What would make Paul's joy complete? A unified, selfless, sacrificial body. He's an older guy now, Paul is. He's incarcerated. He's having to struggle to think positive thoughts. We'll see that in just a second. But he's got these friends he calls the Philippians. He prays for them. He loves them. And he's also understood from Epaphroditus. It's like, Paul, here's the gift. But I need to be honest with you. All is not necessarily as it should be on the Philippian front. There are some issues in the body, and I'm not only giving you the gift, but I'm just translating to you exactly what's happening. And Paul takes this and he begins to address it like any loving pastor would do when dealing with a body of believers. As a coach, as a pastor, he wants them to elevate their the intensity of their effort to be a unified body. And if they will do this, he says, this will make my joy complete. You've already filled me up almost to the top. If you want to top it off and skim off some off the top, here's what you can do for me now. Okay? And so he clarifies this and he begins to unpack it. If we look on slide 2, we see our first question of consideration here this morning. Do I possess spiritual clarity? Paul seems to begin to call them to remember some things that's happened in their life. And he uses a gigantic if-then statement. And when he says if in verse 1, it sounds like maybe it's possible that these statements would not be true, but it's not necessarily the case in Paul's mind. He's being very diplomatic in building his case here, and we could easily translate assuming or because or since these things are true. Since you have encouragement from being united with Christ, because you have comfort from His love, because you have a common sharing in the Spirit, and since there's tenderness and compassion, he says, and then he goes on to say, then make my joy complete. I like his rhetorical style. He's looking to drive a point home, and he does this by setting it up in this way. He strings together these reasons because he wants them to get in the right frame of mind to do what he's going to ask them to do next, and that is to make his joy complete. He gets them ready. You are united with Christ. You have the love of Christ. You have the Holy Spirit working in your life. You have the kindness and tenderness and compassion of a loving Heavenly Father. And perhaps He's too busy to drop the Father's name in there because He mentions the Spirit. He mentions Christ. Perhaps He's thinking the Father. He's in a hurry to get this thing pinned though. But it's like this Trinitarian blessing He always uses in His letters. And He's almost thinking that way here. The Trinity is a divine fellowship. You have been this thing has been going on, and you have been invited up into it. And Christ has done something incredible for the world. I'm making this announcement. You receive this announcement. You are proclaimed to be now in Christ. You have a new identity in Him. You're not worth less. You're worth a lot. Because of Him, you're crucified with Christ, you're buried with Christ, you're raised with Christ. Paul says, simply stated, you're united with Christ. And all the riches, you reign and rule with Christ. It's a partnership with Christ. Again, Paul is all about Christ. And he says to you Philippians, with all of these resources at work in your life, you are now in a position to do the unthinkable, to make my joy complete. And if you've got God working in your life, there is no reason why your joy cannot be great and stable and consistent through the ups and downs of life. And what I mean, so how do I get in Christ, Pastor? Well, Paul very clearly, an announcement's been made. Christ has come and He saved the world. Objectively, salvation has happened for all. Subjectively, what needs to happen now? I need to personally say yes. Okay? Gospel, what is it? An announcement. God has saved the world. It's Christmas. He came, He lived, He died. You have nothing to do with it in terms of producing salvation. It's all on Him. Now, He came because He loves us, and that much we have to do with it. But He came and does it all. That's the gospel. And the gospel, though, is not full circle until you hear it. It's announced, you hear it, and you say, yes, that's me. That's me. I need Christ. I need His provision. I need God's provision for my life. And you know what? You can stab at joy if you want to stab at it your whole life and try to get at joy outside of Jesus. You're never going to find it. It'll be like sand slipping through your fingers. But when you come to Christ and you objectively realize what He's done for the world, you subjectively say, I believe. Life comes flooding in. Paul says that's happened for you Philippians. And I say, has that happened in your life? Have you personally said, yes, I want to be united with Christ. My old life dead and buried. My new life that's come symbolized through baptism, that's come out of the ground. I co-reign with Jesus. I pray and I shape world events through prayer. I'm co-reigning. I'm ruling with Christ in this co-relationship arrangement. Paul says you're doing this in the church at Philippi. You are united with Christ. There's comfort from His love. You have felt it. You have known it. You have walked in this. It's phenomenal what the Lord has done in you and how that, and I think of my dad when he first became a believer, the first thing he did, he wanted to hug everybody in the room. He fought against Christianity, not necessarily fought against Christianity, he just resisted opening up his life to spiritual things. I try to talk to Daddy. Hey, Daddy, what about Christ? What about Christianity? What about your view of things? Maybe another day, Joey. Maybe another day. And I can just remember sitting on his bed at night, just trying to engage him in conversations about that. I know it's weird, but he never would talk about it. But I was like, I just felt compelled. I want to talk to him about it. And he neglected, and God got his attention through a series of events. And he eventually said yes, and when he said yes, he just wanted to hug everybody. Why is that? Because that's the Spirit of Jesus. And when you open your life up to Him, you have you have Him. You have this new capacity to love and to love. John Wesley called it perfect love. It's a bad term, good concept. We're not perfect in our love, but we crave this deeper love. We enjoy this love for people, this less of me and more of Christ in me to others. Okay? And so these Philippians have experienced this. There's a common sharing in the Spirit. Koinonia is the word. It's a fellowship of the Spirit. There's a going back and forth, and you've just had those times when the Spirit has ministered to you, motivated you, and worked in your life. Hurrying on here, there's tenderness and compassion. Paul says, these things are at work in your life, guys. And if they're not, and you're listening to Epaphroditus read this letter to the Philippian believers up on his return trip, if this is not true, Paul is inviting them to get some spiritual clarity in their life. Make sure you're where you need to be spiritually. Your obedience is up to date. You're united with Christ. You're endeavoring to walk with Him. Be obedient in Him. Make sure this is at work in your life, because again, you're just going to stab at joy. You're going to stab at unity in relationships without this essential piece and element. And so it's critical to your joy. And I just asked you the question then. And the question is, do I possess spiritual clarity? Based on what you've said this morning, have you clarified? Maybe I've clarified some things for you. And maybe it's just time for you to say, you know what? I want to personally, subjectively, in my heart, say yes. That's the first step to having a better holiday, better relationships, a greater joy, better marriage, and a life purpose that sustains you through the ebb and flow of life. Okay? Second question, do I pursue relational unity? Then make my joy complete. That's the verb. That's the action. That's what he wants to accomplish. I've got joy, but man, do this. Do what? Be like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. And basically Paul is saying the same thing in different ways, but it shows how earnest and intense he feels this. He's not like a cult leader that demands that they all look alike and they sound alike and they wear the same clothes and they listen to the same music and they live in the same kind of houses. That's not unity. It's uniformity, and that's not what Paul is arguing for. He's arguing for a unity that is a oneness, not necessarily sameness. And so true unity is not sought by pretending that there are no differences, according to the words of Colson, the Colson quote on the front of your bulletin, but by recognizing and respecting those differences while focusing on the great orthodox truths all Christians share. The fact is, sometimes we have differences with others. There's different personalities, there's different interests, there's different passions and functions. There's even different habits that some of us may find distracting. And Paul's focus here is not, he's asking them to let the little stuff go, to focus on the big things. You are Trinitarian blessed. Resolve the little things. Let the little things go. Focus on the big things. And let's let that be the points around which we rally. The 10% you can agree on, give that 100% of your effort. And see if that doesn't change your relationships. That's good advice. You know, later, Paul will specifically make request of two ladies who were having a dispute of some kind. Go to slide 4 for me. Slide number 4. In verse Philippians 2, 1 and 2, he lets Euodia and Syntyche remain anonymous. And that's really good because Paul's diplomatic. But he gets to a place in the letter a little later where he says, I'm just going to say it. And so imagine you're Epaphroditus and you're back to the city of Philippi with this letter, and he starts reading this. And then he's reading it verbatim, and the church is just listening. What's Paul going to say? We've been waiting to hear from him. We don't know if he's alive or dead, or where is he going to be executed. What's happening? And so they're listening. Oh, we got a letter, so he's still alive. That's good. What else does he say? And so they're listening as Epaphroditus reads this letter. And he finally gets to chapter 4 and verse 2, and he says, I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. He calls them by name. Two influential ladies were at odds, evidently, and it was disrupting the unity in the church. And perhaps they were dominant personalities. They probably were. And we don't know precisely what the issues were. But you know how this goes. Euodia probably had her friends. Syntyche probably had her friends. And they were probably setting this up in such a way that if you're nice to either one of them, it's a betrayal of our relationship. Right? That's probably how it's going to go. And what Euodia and Syntyche were debating about, again, Paul doesn't state, but evidently there was some power struggles happening. There was some controlling, some manipulative things that were going on, some suspicion. There we go. Suspicion. All right? Kind of like some of those words, you just can't get them quite out. Okay, suspicion. That's what it is. They probably refused to talk to one another, and they got caught up in the minutia of disagreements. And when they did, it began to hurt the oneness of the body. And what's really interesting to me is that Paul gives a lot of time to what we think in this letter. He talks about being like-minded, of one mind, a lot. He talks about how we think in 1:7, 2:2, 2:5, 3:15 twice, 3:19, 4:2, and 4:10. So those are all different places in the book of Philippians where Paul talks about thinking. And it's like he's saying, get control of your thoughts. Because some of these negative things you're thinking are just going to eat you alive. And in fact, on slide 5, he just comes right out and says it. Finally, brothers and sisters, and I want you to read this and listen to this as if he's saying it not just of things and of sunsets and things, but of people. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble in others, whatever is right in others, whatever is pure in others, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. That's what he says. And maybe there's a wife you need to do this with, a husband you need to do this with, or a co-worker you need to do this with. It's all you're seeing is the little stuff that really irritates you. And you're giving the little 5%, 100% of your effort rather than taking the 5% or 10% you agree with and giving that 100% of your effort and looking for these good things. we find ourselves caught up in this kind of a spiral of negativity and criticism. And it divides the body. It divides the team. And so you have to remember, this is a guy who's in prison. He doesn't have a room with a view. He's surrounded by critics. And he's saying to you know what? You guys want to know how I'm getting through this? You want to know how I get through another holiday? In a prison? Do you want to know how I get through a Thanksgiving? When I'm chained to this Roman guy here? Do you want to know how I get through life when I'm surrounded by critics who don't see the issue clearly, but they think they do, and they get real vocal, mouthy about it? You want to know how I do life? No secret. Right here. Whatever's true, I'm going to give my mind to that. Whatever's noble, I'm giving my mind to that. I don't see a beautiful Mediterranean sunset against a limestone cliff overlooking the Mediterranean Ocean. No, I don't see that. But in my mind, I remember what's right, what's pure, what's lovely, what's admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, I'm going to think about these things. That's my focus. You see, we've gotten sloppy in our thinking, and that's why we get critical. And that's why our relationships go to pot. And that's why our unity gets shattered. We get sloppy. Sloppy. I'll go with this. And I'll focus on this. And Paul is issuing a call. Stop the stinking thinking, the sloppy stinking thinking. Turn it around. Begin to focus on good things. And if you will do this, not just good things, but good things in others. And if you will do this, it will enable you to pursue relational unity. I ask you the question, do I pursue relational unity? That's a question that we all need to ask ourselves. And how might your attitude change if you would give yourself to a more disciplined way of thinking about other people, about your spouse, former spouse, about your extended family? How might it change if you begin to look for these traits in other people? All right? And Paul says, when we possess a spiritual clarity and we have these dynamic truths that work in our life, we are then in a position to increase the joy of other people, specifically his, but really everybody's. You're then in a position to increase the joy of others because you're going to be a relational unifier, not a relational porcupine. And see, that's what we do in relationships. We got porcupines and we got turtles. Okay, and you're going to see it over the holidays. Just get ready. You got the people that walk into the party, the family gathering, and they not there but 2 minutes, and they blow up their quills, and they're just waiting. Come over here. I'm going to get you. Boom, got you. Right? They blow up. Boom, 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 and here they go, rolling right through the peanut butter balls and the cookies and the sheet cakes and the turkey and the ham, and you can't enjoy any of it because you already got ouched. Right? One kind of person. Another kind of person is, I'll just tuck in my shell and I won't say a thing to anybody, no how, no time, ever. And I'll just stew in my corner, put my feet up on the sofa and kick back and lose myself in a football game where my team always gets stomped on Thanksgiving anyway. Right? That's what you're going to do. See, that's your options. But see, I'm arguing and proposing in the spirit of Apostle Paul, there is a better way. We have to learn how to think. It's not hard. What you give your thoughts to translates into emotions. When your thoughts translate into emotions and triggers and things, then it leads to behavior. Question. If I want to change that whole process, what do I need to do? Where do I need to start? Right here. If I want to change my behavior, if I want to change how I feel, right here. What did Paul say to do? It's right here. It's not rocket science. It's not a secret. This is how you can get through the holidays. And it's not just how to get through a holiday, it's how you can thrive in life, in relationships. Guys, this is the way you want to live. This is what makes irresistible communities. This is what makes for irresistible family gatherings. This is what makes life what it is. It's the lovely stuff, the excellent stuff, the praiseworthy stuff, the admirable stuff, the pure stuff, the true stuff. And we're all brothers and sisters in this together. We're a family. So you're going to blow it up. Or you're going to pull in, what are you going to do? You have a choice. And Paul says to these two ladies, Euodia and Syntyche, you're messing up the body of Christ. You're just destroying this irresistible community I want to see created in Philippi. Why don't you get a grip? Two wonderful words that come to my mind when I hear and I understand Paul's argument. You know what I hear him saying? Are you ready for this? Buckle up. Here we go. Ready? Here we go. These are life-changing. Are we ready in the front? Yes. Ready on the right wing? Yes. I got some yeses. In the center? Yes. Yes. Somebody keeps on this and this. I guess that's a yes. Okay. We're here. Yes. We're ready. Ready? All right. Yes, we're ready. Sam is ready. We're ready. Ready? Here's the words. Life-changing. All right? Profound. For all of us. Ready? Grow up. Woo! Look at that. Yes. It's easy. Grow up. Just grow up. That's what he's saying. And if you'll grow up, I'll be happy. Yeah, I have these horrible views of where I'm sitting right now. But I'm going to think on good things, not just the stinky guy by me. And that's how I'm going to make it. You see, don't dissect or don't divide out of this book Paul's context or situation. It helps explain a lot. This is how the man made it. This is the drummer he marched to. He's asking the people. He grew up. He's asking the people at Philippi to grow up. Okay. Now, third question: do I practice relational or personal humility? Slide number 3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. That, ladies and gentlemen, will change the world. I need no evangelism explosion technique. I need no 4 spiritual laws. I need no seminary classroom to teach me this. I need no, and I value all of those things. I really, really do. This will change the world. It will change you and your family, your holiday season, and your life. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. And when you start living for other people, and you start making sure that they succeed or serving them in ways that let you know you're for them, it has an impact. See, negatively, the Philippians were to avoid selfish ambition and vain conceit. And positively, they were to act in humility. And note that Paul doesn't state here that others have more value than you have, because I'm afraid that some of you maybe have gone through some really deep self-esteem issues and self-worth issues, and you've struggled with this, and you're just ready to be a doormat again. Paul is not really emphasizing it that way. And what he's saying is, I want you to value others as if they're more valuable than you. Not necessarily that they are, but you start treating them as if they were. What would your wife do differently if you treat her like a celebrity? Or your husband? Just a thought. What if you started treating people you work with like this? Or the uncle that you're going to see at the Christmas party? What if you treated him like a celebrity rather than wait for him to treat you like one? See, I think it's okay to treat people like celebrities, but it's not okay to try to be one yourself. And Paul says that's life-changing. That's attractive. That changes people. And humility does not mean we put ourselves down, but rather lifting others up. That's what it means. And humility is not having a compulsive need to be more than you are. We all know the person when they're succumbing to that kind of temptation. They're trying to live beyond themselves, outside of themselves, and it's all about drama. A humble person is one who realizes that all that he or she is has come from God. And they're just going to humbly live out their life as best they can, put others first, selflessly sacrifice and serve, and see God use that. Well, we've already talked about selfish ambition, and I've defined that by way of Philippians 1:17. It really stems from the idea that I want to be somebody. I want to be significant. I want to be the guy or gal with perks and privileges. I want to be the one that gets sought out for the interviews. I want the limelight. And it's preoccupied with internal questions like, how am I feeling? How am I doing? How are people treating me? Did they show me respect? Did they include me? Am I being recognized? Did my contribution get acknowledged? And Paul says it's really easy to kind of go with that. But he's asking, even inviting. In fact, he even uses the word pleading. He's pleading for this body of believers, specifically Euodia and Syntyche, to patch it up so the body can unify and move forward. And maybe there's some patch-up work that he would have to plead with you to do, to take care of this holiday season amongst your family. You know, everybody wants to be a celebrity today. Have you noticed that? It used to be that people who became celebrities became a celebrity because they would invent something that changed lives for millions of people, and they would become a celebrity. Or maybe they would champion a ministry that would change thousands, or maybe they would break a sports record and then use that platform to give glory to God. But today, it doesn't really matter what you do. You can have an affair and become a celebrity. You can commit a crime. You can tell a lie. You can go outside naked. You can come out of the closet. It doesn't matter. And you're a celebrity, an instant rock star. It's just the way the world works. And the lights shine bright. People maybe chant your name, and the recognition is great. And not far behind all of this is the sense of entitlement, the sense of expectation of royal treatment. Paul turns all of that on its head. He says, you know what? Let's not strive for that. In fact, the good question he'd like you to ask this morning is, the third question I'm asking you is, do I practice personal humility? And how would it change people around me if I did? If I treated them like the celebrity and I was a servant, how would it change my life? How would it change every significant relationship in my life? And per the earlier story I told you, could it be that I could tap into that joy that the interviewer would often sense in the life of the servants as opposed to the celebrities? Could I tap into that kind of joy in my life? Well, a fourth and final question here, hastening here to our finish. Verse 4, not looking to your own interest, the text says, but each of you to the interest of the others. And the question is, this morning, do I participate in selfless service? Do I make others a priority? Maybe I'm willing to forego my own comfort, maybe my own preferences, maybe my own schedule, maybe my own desires for the loving benefit of another person. Maybe there's the time for me to do that. And maybe today's that day. You know, if we're going to achieve unity, we're going to have to do it by pursuing the interests of others rather than dividing the community by always pursuing our own agenda. And that's something we all need to think about today. And for the mom, it may mean postponing a night out in Goshen with her friends because her child is sick and needs her attention. It may be that. And for the dad, it may mean going to Bath and Body, PacSun, Rue 21 with his teenage daughter on a 3.5-hour only Fort Wayne trip rather than taking time away from her and taking time for himself, maybe at Dick's Sporting Goods or Gander Mountain or Half Price Books. Maybe it just means letting her have the full 3 hours this week on Black Friday. In fact, no, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that. I made the mistake of going to Walmart on Black Friday a couple years ago. God, you help me. Never again. You help me to keep that promise. Now, if you go up, if you go up and see me at Walmart on Friday, don't tell everybody. But I don't know. It'll take an awful lot to convince me that I'm supposed to go back to Walmart on a Black Friday. I just felt dirty. I needed to come home and take a shower or something. It was just awful. But anyway, I survived it. But I'm just saying, my point. Now back to my application point. All right? And that is, sometimes you go to Fort Wayne, I want to do this, this, and this, and maybe you just need to squash that and say, you know what? Megan, this one's yours. The full 3 hours. You go, girl. And someday she'll be about 750 miles away and living her life. And you'll be glad you did. Or maybe for a boyfriend, let's say. Now listen to me. I'm preaching now. This will preach. All right? It may mean telling a girl she doesn't have to perform sexually or compromise her values in order for you to stay intensely interested in who she is. It's quiet. Quiet. Or maybe for a girlfriend, it may mean affirming the spiritual life activities of your guy rather than demanding that he stay with you and watch the movie. Or for a successful athlete, it may mean crediting other players or coaches who had a big part of your personal successes. Or for the longtime church member, it may mean allowing more flexibility in how we do church so that unchurched people would benefit more from what we do. Maybe. Or for the family person, it may mean canceling those plans for the new hiking boots and fixing the garbage disposal instead. Or maybe wearing the same dress again because your college student needed books. Or for the brother or sister, it may mean letting your sibling shine at Thanksgiving dinner this year and not upstaging their accomplishment by telling your bigger and better success story. It may even be as simple as letting someone go first in the school lunch line. Or maybe even go first at Kroger's. Some busy mom with kids and a cart full of groceries. She might want to get checked out and get out of there as soon as she can. And maybe that's your way. It might be something as simple as putting away your clothes without being asked, or putting the garbage on the curb. It might be as simple as, you pick where we eat today and I'm going to pay for both of us. Or I'm not going to charge you for this. Or I did some research on your condition on my own time, and here are some new options for you to consider. Let each of you consider others better than themselves. You see, I believe in the golden rule. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. But I also believe in the platinum rule. Love other people like Jesus would. Did you hear me? I believe that. The platinum rule. Don't just love as you want to be loved. how would Jesus love them? How would Jesus serve them? And see, that makes for a contagious, irresistible community. People want to be in that. They want to be a part of it. They want to circulate in it and let it just kind of ooze into them because it's so radical to everything else they've seen and know. It may be as simple as getting up and moving over one seat to make room for one more. It may be as simple as walking over to shake someone's hand. It may be as simple as clicking like on Facebook. Did I just say that? Oh, I guess I did. It may be as simple as withholding that negative comment you wanted to make. It may be as simple as anonymously giving a gift. Do I participate in selfless service? If you do, those are the kind of people that new Army recruits sit in chapels and cry over. If you do, those are the kind of moms and dads that daughters remember years later. If you do, those are the kind of churches that get remembered when the first time visitor came and felt so welcome there. They never came back, but buddy, if they ever decide to go back to church, they know where they're going. Where does Philippians 2 go next? Well, Paul's going to give us some illustrations, some biographies to look at. We're going to look at Jesus next week. We'll start looking at him. 5 through 11, we're going to look at Paul himself, 17 through 18, chapter 2. We're going to look at Timothy, 2, 19 through 24. And we're going to look at Epaphroditus, our buddy, chapter 2, 25 through 30. You want to flesh it out by illustrations? Paul gives you 4. We'll look at all of them. So don't miss a Sunday. And this morning, as we move from a divisive celebrity mindset to a unifying servant mindset, I want to close this with a story of my own that I kind of discovered in my reading. And I would just ask the question, and this is going to trigger thoughts for some of you, maybe a lot of you, but especially the generation that's been here for a while, okay? Has there ever been a greater celebrity in modern times than Elvis? Huh? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, we have any Elvis fans? Elvis fans in the building? Yeah, we got a few. Okay. Yeah, Elvis had an impact, right? And maybe you're feeling all shook up after this message. So if you are, you can just relax for a minute. I'm going to give you an opportunity to personalize it all in a second. But he made an incredible run in Vegas between 1969 and 1977. And there's a Writer for Life magazine that captured the Elvis phenomenon. Big celebrity, Elvis. King of rock and roll. Swivel those hips, right? Well, what was he wearing? The Life magazine writer said. Oh, nothing lavish. Just a white jumpsuit, slashed to the sternum, lovingly fitted around his broad shoulders, a flat belly, narrow hips, with his massive diamonds, the Life writer writes, the massive diamonds flashing pink and purple from his fingers, and his boyish smile flashing sheepishly through his huge shag of shiny black hormone hair. It's crazy. Elvis, well, whatever. It's celebrity, right? Elvis looked like a heaping portion of male cheesecake. Yeah. I know. This writer's spreading it on thick. And I don't want to, every time you take a bite of cheesecake, you're going to think about that now. I messed it up for you. Remember, think on good things. Right here. All right. Well, this is how the writer says it. A heaping portion of male cheesecake, ripe for the eye teeth of hundreds of women, ogling him through opera glasses. They write, Elvis sometimes grabbed a woman spectator at ringside at the end of his show, and he kissed her firmly on the mouth. And women in the audience, they would lunge toward the stage like salmon up a falls. That was the Elvis phenomenon. Celebrity Elvis, right? In fact, to this day, impersonators and things, They impersonate Elvis, and it still drives people crazy. They have flashbacks. And even years after the Elvis phenomenon, as the sun begins to set and the crowds are going wild, Elvis will come in a different way today, more than likely. At first, a single parachutist can be seen, okay, and against the Nevada sunset and sky, and then there's 2 and 3, and then there's an entire 10-man team, and it kind of dots the Nevada sunset scene and the horizon, and these guys descend from like 2 miles up, and the point man for the flying Elvi, they're called the Flying Elvi, is Brian Balducci. And he'll hit the ground, and hopefully he'll land smoothly, and sometimes if it's not so smooth, he'll have to roll into a parachute landing fall to keep from tearing ligaments or spraining an ankle. And as the other Elvis impersonators glide to the ground, Hound Dog will be blasting from the speakers, and the fans go wild. And the jumpers wear these little Elvi uniforms and white rhinestone jumpsuits. They got the pants with the red slashes that come up to the knee, the scarlet scarves. They'll whip those in the breeze. And all 10 of these little flying Elvi, when they've all landed, it's party time. And the Elvi dash to their guitars and they start syncing to the music. Don't Be Cruel and Jailhouse Rock, dancing and swiveling, and the crowd forgets it's not really Elvis, and they say they go crazy. They line up and they lunge at the stage and they line up for autographs, and it's just like they've reverted back to those years, 1965, 77, whatever, 69, where he made his heyday. These skydivers will leap from their plane at 9,000 feet. They'll free fall for about 160 miles an hour. And when you're at that altitude, coming at that speed, these huge swaths of land look like little postage stamps, and you've got to try to hit those spots. They have landed, the Flying Elvi have jumped, and they've landed in major theme parks and sports arenas, and they've done hotel debuts and fairs and car races and casino openings. And Brian Balducci was kind of the ringleader for this group, and he loved the hype. He said, I prided myself in just being able to do this kind of thing, to be the first one that would jump at these events and to find the target for the rest of the team. And Brian tells his story, this Elvis impersonator. He says, I got old enough and I came from a broken home with abuse and violence, and I wanted to get away from it, so he did the next best thing he knew to do and joined the Marines. And so he joined the Marines, and he got away from all the bad relationships, and he got to see the Caribbean, Mediterranean. But he said, my relational life was a sinkhole. I had no joy. He dated a woman with 3 children. He married her. He had a kid with her, of his own with her, and they moved to Vegas after his stint with the Marines. And Balducci says, I was evil after I got out of the Marine Corps. I wanted to beat up everybody. Nobody could talk to me. I resented the kids. I resented her. Speaking of his wife, he said, my marriage lasted 5 years. And he went into some other business adventures and things. He served as a bouncer. And finally he found and discovered the Flying Elvi. And he said, my team works up to 40 weekends a year. But he says it wasn't just about the adrenaline rush of free falling toward the lights below. It was about hitting on women in the hotel bar, doing shots, talking up the girls, collecting numbers, working toward a one-night stand with someone he had chosen as his quarry. He says that he often was successful, but he came away feeling empty, like every time. The meaninglessness spilled over into his relationships, he says, with all the women that he knew back in Vegas. He had a live-in arrangement. He actually had like 4 different girlfriends, I think, after his divorce. And they would stay with him for 3 or 4 years. And then, like clockwork, the intimacy would be gone. And he found himself dead inside yet again. Brian says, I was always about myself. It was always about him. Looking back, he says, I was always such a royal jerk. And by the time I was 37, I met a wonderful lady, and she discovered a church and church family, this community I've been talking about, this irresistible community, and she began to get outside of herself, and she began to sacrifice, and Brian began to see that in her life, but he refused to be changed. With him, there was no sacrifice. It was always about him. They went to see a movie, it had to be his movie. They hung with friends, it had to be his friends, not hers. He found himself attending a night class at Janet's church, even though they had to break up. And a big guy sat next to him one evening, and he had never seen a huge guy, a guy that big. He looked like a pro wrestler. He'd never seen a guy that big become so open and vulnerable in such a short time. But this guy began to tell Brian about his troubles with girlfriends. He's hooked on heroin. He lost his job. He lost his car. He's this huge dude, and he's bawling his eyes out. And Brian, he got some insight there. It's like, maybe I need to get vulnerable with the people in my life. And sometime after this, he was on a jumping mission in Tampa, Florida. And it was a usual routine for the Flying Elvi. After the show, autograph lines, congregating at the bar afterwards, exchanging numbers with girls. But about just a few minutes into that, he knew the emptiness of it. He went to his hotel room. 30 minutes after that, his buddies call up and say, "Hey, come on down. What's up? What gives?" He says, "You know what, guys, I'm tired, but I want more than that too." And somewhere between falling on his knees one night and the Tampa, Florida jump, Brian said yes to Christ. And it changed him. Well, back to Elvis, the real Elvis. In one of his last scribbled notes before he died, in his bathroom, the real Elvis said, "I feel so alone sometimes. The night is quiet for me. I love to be able to sleep. I'm glad that everyone is gone now. I'll probably not rest. I have no need for all this. Help me, Lord." And today on the road, Brian Balducci, the Flying Elvi leader, is tasked with lip syncing some of the words from one of Elvis's, what some consider to be the most autobiographical of his songs, "Heartbreak Hotel." His baby's left him and he's at the end of Lonely Street. You see, even celebrities need Christ. They do. And as humans, we worship these celebrities. We want to look like them, or at least identify with them in some way. And they're made larger than life. They're airbrushed and implanted and liposuctioned and polished and made larger than life and edited and known from a distance. Well, even celebrities need Christ. And there is one that Paul loved, that he was truly great. And rather than parachute into our world in a celebrity type fashion, he came through a birth canal and he took a basin and a towel and he said, "I'll serve. Let me wash your feet." And that, men and women, is the secret of joy. Jesus didn't present a celebrity model of leadership. He served others first. He often spent time with the lowest members of society. He had no throne to sit on while he was here. He didn't wear a crown. He didn't have a bevy of servants. He didn't have armored guards to make sure he was safe. He just had a borrowed manger and a tomb. And rather than having VIPs walk in front of him and announce how important of a person he was that's coming to town, Jesus, the master's servant, just said, "You know what? I'll just stand at the door and knock if I have to, if you just let me enter your life." Kate Middleton, Miley Cyrus, Kim Kardashian, Justin Bieber, Rihanna, George Clooney. I can safely say this morning they're not going to walk down this aisle. But men and women, Jesus is in the building. And He's your Savior. And He patiently awaits. And He's been waiting a long time. There is no green satin dress for Him to wear, thank God. There's no Armani suit. There's no red carpet. Well, it's kind of red. But you know what I mean. He resists the glitz of the greatest Christian show on earth. He resisted the sensational, like jumping off a pinnacle and gliding to the floor, to the ground, and thus offering other magic tricks to garner support and a following. No, He just climbed up on a rugged cross. This is how much I love. This is it. This is why I came. And maybe you've been kind of a celebrity mindset in your life. It's easy to pick up on that. But you know, pedestals and things may have their perks. But ultimately, it's just another kind of prison. And so be careful about wishing for a celebrity life. A life where you can't admit to struggling with anything because you're afraid of losing fans. A life where you don't want to disappoint people, so you push them away so they'll not know the real you. Be careful about the celebrity mindset that drives us into our work, and we work so hard to maintain the image. And we burn out because we have to work so hard to maintain an image that's almost impossible to maintain. No. You're not going to find the big celebs here this morning. You just find a lowly servant. Christ. Do you need Him this morning? Subjectively saying yes. Do you need Him? Is it time? I think it is.